Worlds Part 1 has probably been the biggest update to No Man's Sky for a number of years, perhaps even the biggest since the Origins update a few years ago, and it's safe to say it's going to get even bigger considering this is the first ever major update added to the game that will come in multiple parts. With so much added into Part 1 already, including drastic new changes such as richer, wilder and far more varied planets, including brand new flora, fauna, landscapes and weather, alongside huge enhancements to water and clouds, amongst many other changes, it begs the question what could possibly be added on top of this in a Part 2? And also, when will Part 2 actually come out? Well, in this video I'm going to discuss all of that and more, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get stuck in. If, by the way, you get to the end of this video and you think there could be extra additions or features in part 2 that I haven't included in this video, why don't you leave a comment letting us all know what that potential new addition or new feature could be. As the next update is likely going to be Worlds Part 2, I'm pretty confident that there'll be no additions to the likes of, say, space stations, freighters and outer space in general, because, well, it'd be more focused on, well, worlds of No Man's Sky, obviously, which there are a whopping 18 quintillion of them. And secondly, for obvious reasons, this list also doesn't include anything that was actually already in Worlds Part 1 because, well, that would make no sense for them to change it again now, would it? Anyway, let's get stuck into that potential list of Part 2 features. Now, quite a lot of people commented on my previous Worlds Part 1 video wanting cities, or at least something resembling cities, to be added as a big feature in Part 2. Now, cities in No Man's Sky is something I've discussed in the past a few times, and whilst I think they would be a great addition to the game, I don't think they'll actually add full cities in. Though, with that being said, I do think they may decide to eventually extend the existing settlements feature, allowing us to create bigger settlements with a variety of new functions and features as part of it. Doing it this way would certainly be a much easier and far quicker task than creating large cities from scratch. And to be completely honest, I still somehow don't think it'll actually be possible, technically speaking, to add actual cities into the game, because No Man's Sky supports the PlayStation 4, Xbox One and Nintendo Switch, and these struggle to cope with decent sized bases at the best of times, so they basically fall on their ass with cities added into the game. One thing I do actually think they may add in Worlds Part 2 would be new on-planet structures, or at the very least a redesign of the existing on-planet structures, similar to how the space stations have recently been totally redesigned. So I'm talking about things like larger abandoned buildings and manufacturing facilities, alongside, say, larger and more in-depth trading outposts and other stuff like that. For the most part, these on-planet structures haven't changed for a number of years. In fact, since their inception in various updates, I would say, so I would not be surprised at all if they were to get a bit of an overhaul in Worlds Part 2. I also think that as an extension of those redesigns, they may even add totally new structures altogether that we've never seen before in No Man's Sky. Perhaps things like new outposts to discover, visit and explore, maybe some new ancient structures that we can explore as well, and personally, I would want something like this because, as I've said, these on-planet points of interest aren't particularly varied and they're definitely due a bit of an overhaul if you ask me. What do you guys think? Do you want new and more varied on-planet points of interest? Let me know in the comments. And so far in Worlds Part 1, we've obviously seen an overhaul to the water appearance and physics, and that's been one of my favourite additions so far, to be honest. I love it. But what about beneath the surface of the water? Could we be about to see a bit of an expansion and enhancement to the life and environments under there? So I'm talking about things like deeper oceans for a start, but more specifically, more points of interest to find down there. Sunken settlements, new sunken buildings and crash sites and all of that good stuff. I'd also like to see some new underwater base building paths added to the game because for the most part, underwater base building is a little bit limited right now and most players' underwater bases look reasonably similar, with the only real difference being the size of them. And on top of all of that, how about a brand new water-based exocraft? Because, let's be honest, the Nautilon is just a little bit shit. It doesn't look exciting whatsoever, and it's damn slow. I'd love a more interesting underwater exocraft to explore some potentially new underwater structures and dangers. Overall though, I feel an underwater update is overdue, and what a better time to expand it than Worlds Part 2. Sticking with the underground kind of vibe, Do you think it would be possible to get an enhancement to the cave systems in Part 2? Caves aren't exactly the most interesting aspect of No Man's Sky, so adding more depth to these would be a pleasant but very welcome surprise in my eyes. They could even add various new underground structures for us to explore, like old ancient settlements, ancient crash sites, perhaps even more horrors down there, similar to the desolate freighters. So that makes them actually worth exploring. I've seen a few people mention they want cave enhancements on Reddit as a possible addition, and it's certainly something that would give a new dimension to the planets in the game. One thing I'd love to see, and it seems Hello Games are looking to achieve this exact feature in Light No Fire, is a multi-biomes planet. Let's face it, a wider variety of planets is awesome, but what would take it to even the next level from there is multiple biomes on the same planet, because right now, planets look the same all over. So, with them developing Light No Fire to have one huge multi-biomes planet, they may have found a way to do the same thing in No Man's Sky, but just on a smaller scale. Like we could have dense forests, sand deserts, ice deserts, swamps, whatever else on the same celestial being. And this update and Part 2 update will be based around worlds, hence the name. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we could see multiple biomes planets in the very near future. But failing the multiple biome theory, I think even just adding more new types of biomes into the game would be a neat addition as well. Because if you've been playing the game as long as I have, you've seen all of the biome types multiple times over by now, so something extra to freshen them up even more in Part 2 would be pretty darn awesome. And moving on. For years now, No Man's Sky has had 4 different types of star system: yellow, red, green and blue, each with their own very unique resource to go with it. But what about adding a 5th system into the mix? Perhaps a purple one could be used with a new, currently unknown unique resource type. This could easily expand out into new lore, new story quests, along with new upgrades required to visit these brand new systems in the first place, new structures in these systems, and so on. It's certainly one way to expand the already massive universe of No Man's Sky, so I wouldn't think it's out of the question entirely, especially when we're talking about worlds. Considering we already have dissonant planets, but these could, in theory, be entirely dissonant systems or something like that with unique resources and artifacts to find. Who knows, would you like an entirely new system type to explore with Worlds Part 2? Let us know in the comments below. Now, of course, Worlds Part 1 wasn't all about the enhancements to planets. I mean, granted, it was the main feature of it, but it did also include a few other smaller yet crucial updates as part of it. So I'm suspecting Worlds Part 2 will be absolutely no different here. So I'd like to see things like improved terrain manipulation, more base building parts both on land and underwater, variety of quality of life improvements as well. Like, if you're not entirely sure what some of the smaller updates of Worlds Part 1 were, check out my recent video going over exactly that. I'll leave a link to the description for that video below for you. As for a release date of Worlds Part 2, that is totally up in the air at this point in time, though I would think they'll be aiming to release it before the end of the year. And why do I say that? Well, we're in the middle of summer now, basically, at least if we can class this weather we get here in the UK as summer, but that leaves just under the half of the year to finish off Worlds Part 2. And Hello Games tend to bring out a major update in the second half of the year, though I do think an August release will be far too early, so I'm predicting it'll be either October or November. Though don't take that as gospel, it is merely just speculation at this point. I'd also likely guess that Part 2 is already well into its development by this point, and I'd probably even say some of the features were maybe even pulled from Part 1 as they weren't quite ready for it just yet. And if, for the sake of argument though, we don't get it in 2024, then I'm putting my money on a February 2025 release, as that will align with most of Hello Games' first updates of the last few years. But anyway, when do you guys think they'll end up releasing Worlds Part 2? Do you think we'll get our hands on it before the end of 2024? Or do you think it'll get released in 2025 instead? Let me know in the comments below. To recap, some of the main possible features as part of the Worlds Part 2 update could be 1. Cities or settlement expansions, 2. New and redesigned on-planet structures, 3. Underwater enhancements, 4. Cave enhancements, 5. Multi-biomed planets, and 6. Entirely new star systems. Now, it's worth noting this is entirely speculation at this point, and some of it may come true, or none of it may come true. As I mentioned earlier in this video, if you think there could be potential new features or additions in Worlds Part 2 that I haven't covered in this video, why not leave a comment letting us know what that is? The more suggestions we can get in the comment section of this video, the better. Anyway, there you have it folks, there are a bunch of potential new features and new additions that we could be seeing in Worlds Part 2, and a possible rough timeline of when we could expect to see Part 2 actually come out. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are still here, it would be totally awesome if you could support my channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. You can now become a channel member as well, and as always, thank you for watching this video, and I will catch you in the next one.